unexpected trap. 3 Russian MiG-31 Foxhound interceptors roared through the cold Baltic skies. Their engines burned white trails across thin clouds.
Disappointed in President Putin. I thought he would get this thing over with. He should have had that war done in a week. And I said to him, you don't look good. You're 4 years fighting a war that should have
Бумажный тигр. Я же сказал, что Россия все эти годы воюет не с ВСУ, не с Украиной, а воюет практически со всеми странами НАТО. Значит, если говорить Да, вы спросили, что происходит у нас на линии боевого соприкосновения. Ну так вот, я сейчас к тиграм вернусь. Значит, у нас практически по всей линии боевого соприкосновения наши войска уверенно идут вперед. Но если мы воюем со всем блоком НАТО и так двигаемся, продвигаемся, уверенно себя чувствуем, и, значит, это бумажный тигр, что тогда сама НАТО?
To the pilots inside, everything seemed under control. Then, suddenly, alarms screamed. Red lights blinked across their cockpits. Their radar scopes filled with multiple unknown threats. Warning tones buzzed in their ears. On their screens appeared the shapes of 2 Swedish JAS-39 Gripen fighters. The Gripens had locked on with Meteor missiles. The MiG-31 crews were shocked. And before they could react, even more icons appeared on their scopes. 2 F-35A Lightning II stealth fighters, almost invisible until the very last second. The Russian interceptors had flown straight into NATO's trap. What they thought was just another border game was about to become a dangerous lesson. The mission begins. It began early in the morning on September 19th, 2025. At an airbase deep in Russia's Karelia region, ground crews prepared 3 MiG-31 interceptors. These jets were not ordinary fighters. The MiG-31 could fly at Mach 2.83, faster than a rifle bullet. It could soar up to 25,000 meters, higher than any NATO fighter normally dared to climb. Its giant radar could spot targets at almost 400 kilometers away. The Russian pilots knew this. They felt like kings of the sky. Their plan was simple. Fly toward the Baltic, slip into Estonian airspace, stay just long enough to make a point, then retreat home. To them, it was nothing more than a show of force, a political stunt, a chance to remind NATO who owned the skies near Russia. But what they didn't know was that NATO had already marked them as high priority.
In Latvia, armed forces chiefs from all 32 NATO member states are meeting in Riga to focus their collective deterrence and defense on the alliance's eastern flank after recent incidents involving Russian violations of NATO airspace. This week, NATO fighter jets scrambled after Russian warplanes were spotted near Latvian airspace over the Baltic Sea, prompting fresh concerns among allies about Moscow's repeated airspace violations.
Miscalculation of NATO's response. The Russians believed they would meet the same response as before, maybe 2 F-16 scrambling from Lithuania or Poland.
This morning, NATO sending a warning to Russia's Vladimir Putin. UK fighter jets flying over Poland in a NATO air defense mission. A direct response to more than 20 Russian drones crossing into Polish airspace earlier this month. The UK Defense Secretary calling it a successful operation to defend our allies from reckless Russian aggression. And just days ago, 3 Russian fighter jets accused of violating Estonia's airspace, flying for about 12 minutes over NATO territory. NATO scrambling jets to intercept. The president asked about the Friday incursion.
I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't like when that happens. It could be big trouble.
This was new. This was different. And the Russians had no idea they were about to pay for underestimating their enemy. Russian overconfidence. From their cockpits, the MiG-31 pilots looked down on Estonia, its small islands dotting the blue Baltic Sea. They were calm, overconfident. Their Zaslan M phased array radars swept the skies, searching for NATO fighters. But they saw nothing. That's because the F-35 Lightning II doesn't appear like normal planes. Its stealth skin and hidden engine design make it nearly invisible to conventional radar. The Russians were staring at empty screens, while NATO jets were already stalking them from below and behind. The MiG-31 crews thought NATO was afraid. They thought no one dared challenge them at such high speed and altitude. But the silence was not fear. It was patience. NATO was waiting to strike with precision. The arrival of the F-35A. Out of the gray clouds, 2 Italian Air Force F-35A Lightning II fighters rose. These were 5th-generation stealth jets, machines built to see everything but remain unseen. Each F-35 carried AEM-120D AMRAAM missiles inside its hidden weapons bay. These missiles could hit targets over 160 kilometers away. Even scarier, the F-35's data link allowed them to fire at targets they didn't even see, receiving guidance from Allied radars miles away. The MiG-31 pilots finally noticed them, but it was too late. The F-35s already had missile lock. This was the first time in the Baltic that NATO used its most advanced fighter against Russia's fastest interceptor. The stage was set for a clash of generations, stealth versus speed. The Gripen hunters enter the scene. And then came another surprise. From Malbork Air Base in Poland, Swedish JAS-39 Gripen fighters streaked toward the scene. These jets had recently joined NATO's air policing mission after Sweden entered the alliance in 2024. The Gripen may not be as famous as the F-35, but it carried something terrifying: the MBDA Meteor missile. Unlike normal missiles, which lose speed after launch, the Meteor used a ramjet engine to keep pushing through the sky. Its no-escape zone stretched far beyond anything Russia had. For the MiG-31 pilots, this was a nightmare. They suddenly realized they were being tracked by multiple Gripens and F-35s at once. Their escape paths were closing. The order to engage. Inside NATO's Combined Air Operations Center, the order was given. Lock on. Do not fire. Send the message. This was the key moment. NATO wanted to show strength without sparking a war. The Gripens and F-35s aimed their weapons, letting the Russian pilots know they were seconds away from destruction. One Swedish pilot even delivered a chilling warning over secure radio. "Foxhounds, your electronic systems are under our control." It was not an empty threat. The Gripen's advanced electronic warfare pods jammed the MiGs' radars. The Russian crews saw static. Their powerful sensors were useless. For the first time, the MiG-31 pilots felt blind. Tactical surprise and F-35 entrapment. As the Russians tried to break away, the F-35s shifted position. Their stealth made it impossible for the MiGs to track them. Every time the Russians turned, they found nothing. It was like fighting ghosts. At one point, the F-35s moved within 20 kilometers of the MiG-31s, well inside lethal missile range, without the Russians even knowing. This was the trap. NATO wanted to prove speed means nothing when you cannot see your enemy. Retreat of the MiGs. Finally, after 12 tense minutes, the Russian jets made their decision. They turned east, heading back toward Kaliningrad. But the retreat was not smooth. The MiG-31s were forced to fly low to avoid continued radar lock, wasting precious fuel. Their supposed strength, altitude, and speed had been stripped away. As they crossed out of Estonian airspace, NATO fighters shadowed them until they were deep over the Baltic Sea. Only then did the F-35s and Gripens break off. The message was clear. Next time, NATO might not hold fire. The lesson for Russia. The incident shocked military analysts. For years, Russia believed the MiG-31 was untouchable. Its speed and missiles made it the terror of the skies. But September 19th proved otherwise. In real combat, NATO fighters had shown they could pin the foxhounds in place, blind their radars, and trap them with weapons they could not outrun. For Russia, the lesson was bitter. Raw speed no longer guaranteed safety. Could the MiG-31 survive a real fight? Here's the question. What if NATO had chosen to fire? Could the MiG-31 have survived? The answer is not encouraging for Russia. The MiG-31 can launch the R-37 missile, which has a range of almost 400 kilometers. That sounds impressive until you realize the missile needs clear radar tracking to guide it. If the MiG's radar is jammed or tricked, the missile is nearly useless. And against stealth fighters like the F-35, the MiG-31 would struggle even to get a radar lock. So yes, the MiG-31 can run fast, but in modern combat, it would be running blind. The weapons that outmatch it. The real edge was NATO's weapons. The Meteor missile gave the Gripen a deadly reach. Unlike old missiles that slow down, the Meteor keeps flying at high speed until impact. For a MiG-31, that means there's almost no chance to dodge once it's fired. The AIM-120D AMRAAM, carried by the F-35, is just as dangerous. With GPS guidance, a two-way data link, and incredible maneuverability, it can chase targets even as they try wild escape turns. Together, these missiles made the MiG-31 speed meaningless. You can't outrun a weapon that still accelerates when you're slowing down. Strategic outcome. In the end, no shots were fired, no jets were lost. But the message was delivered loud and clear. NATO proved it could control the skies over the Baltic, even against Russia's fastest interceptor. Sweden, the newest NATO member, showed its Gripens could seamlessly integrate into Allied defenses. Italy showed the power of the F-35A. And Russia? It was forced to retreat, its fearless foxhounds humbled. But the bigger question remains open. What happens next time? If Russia pushes harder, if NATO decides enough is enough, could we see the first direct clash of modern stealth fighters against supersonic interceptors? For now, the world waits. The skies over the Baltic grow more crowded each week, and every pilot, Russian or NATO, knows the next encounter may not end with a simple escort. It may end with missiles in the air. The 12-minute clash exposed the MiG-31 not as a hunter, but as vulnerable prey, outmatched by NATO's stealth, electronic warfare, and networked tactics. In the Baltics, speed and altitude no longer guarantee survival. Next time, the warning could be replaced with fire. Thank you for watching us.